Adite samabhavat sahasa hridive pathu smarantya bharturadesham stanach chasrik prasusruve tadadite samabhavat sahasa hridive pathu smarantya bhartur adesham stanach chasrik prasusruve tadadite samabhavat sahasa hridive pathu smarantya bharturadesham stanach chasrik prasusruve Smarantya bharturadesham stanach chasrik prasusruve. Tada! At that moment, Dite of Diti, Samabhava occurred, Sahasa suddenly, Hridi in the heart, Vepatuhu a shudder, Smarantya recalling, Bhartuhu of her husband Kashyapa. Adesham, the words, Stanat, from her breast, Cha, and Asrik, blood, Prasusruve, flowed. At that very moment, a shudder suddenly ran through the heart of Diti, the mother of Hiranyaksha. She recalled the words of her husband, Kashyapa, and blood flowed from her breasts. At Hiranyaksha's last moment, his mother, Diti, remembered what her husband had said. Although her sons would be demons, they would have the advantage of being killed by the personality of Godhead himself. She remembered this incident by the grace of the Lord, and her breasts flowed blood instead of milk. In many instances, we find that when a mother is moved by affection for her sons, milk flows from her breasts. In the case of the demon's mother, the blood could not transform into milk, but it flowed down her breasts as it was. Blood transforms into milk. To drink milk is auspicious, but to drink blood is inauspicious, although they are one and the same thing. This formula is applicable in the case of cow's milk also. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Sarva Shastradi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Sattva Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikpada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavatam Prabhu Kaliphanto Tataditya Shri Krishna Parivartita Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshaksharayate Sarvada Sarvasivyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostame Madeka Bandho Madsangi Madguru Madmahadhana Madnistaraka Madbhagya Madananda Namostute Asadhu Sadhute Dain Adinicho Chatakara Anamuncha Kadachinam Premna Hritkantayos Puram. Tadadite Samabhavat Sahasa Hridi Vepatu Smarantya Bhartvaradesham Stanachchasrik Prasusture. At that very moment, a shudder suddenly ran through the heart of Diti, the mother of Hiranyaksha. She recalled the words of her husband Kashyapa, and blood flowed from her breasts. Ta-da! At that moment, we kind of have a similar show word in magicians, ta-da! And it's kind of humorous timing, because in the last verses we were just hearing about some magic. We see this sort of display of magic often among demons and yakshas. Specifically to mind is when Dhruva Maharaj is battling the yakshas. There's some fantastic displays of magic, and at some point he almost feels overcome by it, but then he pushes through and wholesale slaughter. Actually, the wholesale slaughter was already going on. But Krishna is Yogeshwar. He's the master of all mystics, so Hiranyaksha's tricks were dispelled very easily with his Sudarshan Chakra. Sort of slowly escalating. Began by weapons fighting. At one point he'd even knocked Varaha's mace to the ground. The description is very beautiful, how the mace fell. And then Varaha easily knocked his mace to the ground. He picked up a trident that was cut to pieces, and then finally he resorted to these magic tricks. And in the coming verses we'll see his last attempt to grab the Lord directly, to contain him in a physical space, the ultimate foolishness of the demons, to think that they could grasp God within their mental understanding, or even more ridiculous, within your physical grasp. But that's the final. Then he's dealt with at last. But this is just before that, and Diti is feeling tada at that moment. His magic has been dispelled by the Sudarshan Chakra. He has nothing left. He's standing there unarmed, ready to attack the Lord with his bare arms. The Lord has his Sudarshan Chakra, and at that moment, blood begins to flow from her breasts. Stanach Chasrik Prasus. I was kind of hoping the commentaries would reveal whether that was, I get sort of an implication, and this is maybe inappropriate to speculate publicly, but the implication seems to me to be that that's what Hiranyaksha was reared on. Not that only in this moment blood is flowing, but that's sort of what flowed from her breasts in affection for him from the beginning. Somehow for these demons it couldn't transform into milk. Now they could have had milk earlier, but I kind of get the impression that they're reared on this untransformed version of milk, blood. In the case of the demon's mother, the blood could not transform into milk, but it flowed down her breast as it was. Blood transforms to milk. To drink milk is auspicious, but to drink blood is inauspicious, although they are one and the same thing. So this has sort of been ongoing theme for this pastime. We have this very stark separation of auspicious and inauspicious being displayed for us in the instructions, bhartur adesham. Adesham means words, but very specifically orders, strong words, adesha. He's telling her, quite frankly, wait, Prabhupada says, wait a few seconds, wait a muhurta, wait 45 minutes. Just wait 45 minutes. There will be an auspicious time coming. Right now, Shiva's passing through. There's a beautiful description. Maybe it's just in the purport. Prabhupada is talking about one of his eyes is like the sun, the other like the moon, and the third eye is like fire. And he's there witnessing. He's passing through. And Kashyapa says, you know, it's inappropriate to perform this act in front of Shiva. We shouldn't have him witness. This is an inauspicious time. But did the overcome could not wait. And I found it very interesting, the role of the husband and the wife. Being a grihastha myself, what is my role? And it was very interesting timing because my wife had just been talking to me, wouldn't you like a second child? And as she's saying it, I'm reading this verse that says, Diti could not wait, and Kashyapa warned her, now is not auspicious. And I was like, here comes Hiranyakashipu. Of course, what was it? I was telling my spiritual master about the timing sort of auspicious events in my life and my relationship with him, and it always sort of came when something else inauspicious was coming. And he had a name for it, I'm trying to remember. What's the word when you don't walk under ladders, or you don't? Superstition. Some spiritual superstition, something like that. But just this sort of idea. Sometimes you can read into things more, but it was just my funny moment of spiritual superstition. I was like, oh. But anyway, in any case, the point is that Diti couldn't wait, and she didn't follow Bhartaradesha. But despite this balance of auspicious and inauspicious, her intentions and her service mood. Oh, that's before, I'm sorry, let's hit points one at a time. What I was wondering about is this relationship between husband and wife, because sometimes there's a saying, biblical saying, what's okay for Job isn't okay for both. What Job can do, the cow can't, bovine, both. And so sometimes you see an example set, a very high bar set by great personalities. So Kashyapa is there able to fulfill the desire of Diti despite any auspiciousness or inauspiciousness. For me, in such a case, having that knowledge that he had that this is not okay, it would just be a flat no. Sorry, babe, you gotta suffer for another 45 minutes. We'll get to it after. In my head, it seems that simple. And yet on this large scale, on the platform of these powerful personalities, he has some deeper realization, he has some deeper ability to fulfill the desires of his wife. And he gives, there's quite a few verses in which he's glorifying her position. And many grihastas quote these verses, that the wife is the safe boat for controlling the senses. And so I was reading through these, and it was interesting to me, this understanding of the relationship between great personalities in marriage. But in the theme of auspiciousness versus inauspiciousness, we have this overriding factor of devotional service, of this honest attempt to serve, as being so much greater than any overshadowing inauspiciousness. And this is revealed in his statement that, yes, your 2 sons will be killed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but because of your great devotion, because of this wonderful service you've performed, the son of your son will be a great, great Vaishnava. So from the inauspiciousness comes the ultimate auspiciousness. Auspicity beyond auspicity. To have a grandson like Prahlad Maharaj. Powerful. So despite disobeying her husband's instructions, and now she's smarantya bhartaradesham, now she's recalling them. But at the time she said, good. That they be killed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead is good. She immediately expresses relief. That's what a glorious way to go. If you're going to go one way or another, it's a good way to go. But she says, but what I'm afraid of is that they be cursed by the Brahmins, that they offend the Brahmins. Death is secondary. Let us not offend the Brahmins. Which is also very interesting because in Srimad Bhagawatam, the next progression instantly jumps to Jai and Vijay offending the Brahmanas. And the result comes. So, this big circle, auspicious, inauspicious. And the same thing happened with Prithu Maharaj. He was churned from the body of Vena. How inauspicious. Anga left, disgusted, walked away. But this Amogha Virya, this powerful seminal line coming from Dhruva Maharaj, so potent, Amogha Virya. And so, although extremely inauspicious, from the chest of Vena was churned Prithu Maharaj. What king? The descriptions of Prithu are... I was just reading last night something about how glorious Prithu was. I'm trying to remember the context, but I think it related, but anyway. So I've told this before, but as a child, the very first book I ever read was Science of Self-Realization. And the second book was placed on my desk by my grandma Lolia, affectionately referred to as Lolly. Nectar of Devotion. You came into my room, I don't know, it was 10 or something. You put it on my desk and you said, you should read this, it's a good book. And I was reading through, and Nectar of Devotion has this sort of ability of compiling quotes. You see a lot of references to the same topic in the same place. I remember reading this chapter, and it was just reference after reference after reference of the great affection for Krishna of Mother Yashoda and how milk would flow from her breasts. And I was, 7 years off of drinking milk, but it came to my mind that I never saw milk run from my mother's breast. Was she not so affectionate toward me? Is this a normal thing for other mothers? Is it just my mom that... Well, you can only read so many quotes before you start to wonder. But this is an intense emotion, not something normally seen in the material world. Chapter 29 of Nectar of Devotion describes the 33 Vyabhichari bhavas. Vyabhichari, you don't see it translated very often, but there's one place in CC where it means falsehood. And there's a distinction. Someone, I forget the context, but they're discussing a brahmachari, not a vyabhichari. Making some play on words, but vyabhichari means disturbing. These disturbing bhavs. Emotions so intense, they churn in one a sense of angst. But in spiritual ecstasy, these vyabhichari bhavs are wonderful. In fact, there was one description I was reading. Here, I'll just read it to you. Swarup Damodar is chanting this verse, and the meter caught me. So, Rase harimiha vihita vilasam smarati mano mama krita parihasam. Here in the arena of the rasa dance, I remember Krishna, who was always fond of joking and performing pastimes. And so it said that as Swarup Damodar was singing this, known for his beautiful singing voice, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu experienced all 33 of the Vyabhichari bhavs. I think it says all 33. And one of them, of these overwhelming ecstatic emotions, is this intense expression of affection. And it's described as the milk flowing from the breast of Mother Yashoda. And so we don't have experience in this material world of pure love. It's mixed. There's no expression between, you can't have that when you're covered by, never mind the subtle body, by a gross body. We have a tinge of personal, a sense of self separate from the soul. And as long as that sense of self, that false ego, is present, there cannot be pure love. And so the closest thing, when you draw sort of a parallel so that someone can understand maybe some semblance of what is pure love, we describe between a mother and a child. How beautiful is that relationship? Mother and a child. So much so that you see it referenced often in Srimad Bhagawatam. When Vritrasur, that's been a favorite play of Madhuti's recently, we even performed it with Bhakti Abhayashamaj and my spiritual master. It was really quite fun. I'm sure there's a more profound word to use in the context, quite enlivening. But at some, what's that, Marge? It was fun. Okay. I'm trying to reel in that word. There was a moment for me, and I don't take, I take everything with a grain of salt when it comes to when it comes to horoscopes and astrology and all these things, but in the Enneagram system, the number 7, the enthusiast, which very clearly is me, one of the descriptions says they will use the word fun a lot. And it was too uncannily true. I use that word constantly. And one time my spiritual master criticized it in a certain context. I had said something was fun, and he looked at me, he was kind of, maybe you have a better choice of word than fun. And I was thinking, oh man, I do look at the world in terms of what's fun and what's not. Again, personal gratification. If it's fun, do it. If it's not fun, it's to be avoided. Pleasure in the mode of passion, or anything in the mode of passion. Fun at the beginning and then sadness after. But in any case, within that play, in the context of the play of Vritrasur, there's a certain point where Vritrasur's arms and legs are lopped off. He's just a torso. And still, so fearsome a warrior, he's able to swallow Indra. But before he does that, he's there described like a mountain whose wings have been cut off by Indra. That description is there. So terrible, the shortcomings of the mind, that we get little snippets of things we read. But I was just reading about how Indra chopped off the wing of Garuda, and Prabhupada mentions in the purport that Garuda wanted to respect Indra's weapons. He could have easily just thwarted it, but in stealing the pot of nectar, Indra threw his thunderbolt, and Prabhupada says Garuda dropped a wing. Such a description, it's kind of like, okay, here you go, Indra, your weapons are powerful. But in any case, Vritrasura appeared like a mountain whose wings have been cut off by Indra. Blood is flowing from his torso. And he's there with his wild copper hair and sharp teeth. Vritra means one who can swallow. Huge mouth, powerful. And he begins to pray this sort of the sweetest prayer. One of the lines was Stanyam yata vatsatara kshidharta. It begins Ajata paksha ivamataram kaga. Even more. Yesterday, unfortunately, Nam and I, we were cutting this banyan tree, and there were quite a few nests. I didn't notice as I was cutting, but when we were dragging the branches, there were quite a few. I was feeling a little sorry. We displaced, evicted many birds. But when you think of how helpless, ajata means unborn, or one whose wings haven't formed to the ability to fly. Paksha, bird. Eva mataram kaga is waiting for his mom to feed him. Dude, this is a huge, scary demon with sharp teeth saying, Ajata paksha iva mataram khaga priyam priyeva yushitam vishanna. Waiting for a lover, waiting for her beloved to come and satisfy her in all respects. Stanyam yata vatsara. Stanyam, the same word, breast, the udders of the cow. Stanyam yata vatsatara kshudharta. The calf is waiting for that time of feeding, at which time it will be united with its mother and drink nourishing milk. Manora vindaksha dadrikshatetvam. I'm waiting for that moment. Oh, lotus-eyed Lord. Aravindaksha dadrikshatetvam. At that time when I can see you. And to see means to serve. Waiting for that time when I can serve you. And he's comparing himself to these helpless. He's there without arms. He's basically like a jata paksha. He can't fly, he can't move. So this understanding of the calf longing for the milk, this is the mood with which Vritrasura approached his prayer. And here from the other side we have Diti. Smarantya bhartura desham. She's remembering the words of her husband Kashyapa. And stan yach chasrik prasusuve. Asrik prasusuve. Blood begins flowing from her breast. Intense emotion. Practically vyabhichari. Disturbing, intense emotion. Thinking of her son. And Prabhupada almost can't help slipping in at the end there. The cow's milk is there for nourishment. Blood transformed to milk is good. Blood, not good. Milk, good. Blood, bad. It's very clear. You take the milk from your mother, it's your mother. And then to kill your mother, to kill the cow for the satisfaction of the tongue. Just imagine, auspicious, inauspicious. Blood, inauspicious. Cow's milk, auspicious. Right next to each other, side by side. And yet wholesale slaughterhouses opened. Great suffering. And we see the result of such things. Prabhupada said that now they're sending their children off to war wholesale to be slaughtered. Hridi vepatu. Tadadate samabhavatsa sa hridi vepatu. The first chapter of Gita I started learning really well was actually the 10th chapter. We chanted it recently. My father was visiting when I was very young, and he said, what would you like to chant? What would you like to memorize? And we memorized several verses on that trip. We memorized Govindam prayers, at least the ones we chant, not the whole Brahma Samhita. And we memorized a good amount of the 10th chapter. And then from there I went back and started learning the first chapter. When you chant Gita enough, you start to know the first chapter pretty well. And the second I read Vepatu, I couldn't help but think of Arjuna on his chariot. Gandivam samsate hastat, tvakchayava paridahyate, burning them out. But right before that, Vepatuscha sharire, his whole body shuddering, trembling. Vepatuscha sharire. And this was experienced by Arjuna in the face of a fratricidal war in which everything was coming to fruition. All the heartache, all the difficulties, it's all coming to fruition in this great battle. Vepatuscha sharire. And his body is trembling. His Gandiva is slipping from his hand. And this pastime also is sort of coming to a head, at least for Hiranyaksha. Hiranyakashipu is yet to come. But Hiranyaksha's done a lot. He's dumped the earth, he's attacked the Supreme Lord directly, now his magic has been dispelled, and it's all about to happen. And in this climactic moment, tada, at this moment, tadadati samabhavat, smarantya bharturadesha. Sahasa hridi vepatu. That's sahasa hridi vepatu. Deep in her heart is trembling. She's experiencing this intense emotion. Any comments, questions, corrections? Sister Devi?
I think it's so incredible is that ultimately it was all planned from the beginning. You know, Krishna curses Jai and Vijay. It's alright, yeah, well, Kumar's curses them and then they come down, and so ultimately Diti was just following the path, and she knows that she has these great demons, and yet she doesn't love them any less. She knows that she's going to give birth to these incredible, terrible demons. She loves the Supreme Lord, and yet she also loves her little demon babies. And I think that's also so beautiful that she could have this intense feeling and still raise them as their mother, and not, be like, okay, you guys are demons, like, I don't want to have anything to do with
Yeah, we read, when I was talking with Shamir Prashprabhu about Srimad Bhagawatam, it was all the different pastimes were popping up. I was getting really excited about it, I was thinking we should all read Srimad Bhagavatam together. But there's Padmavati, the mother of Kamsa. It's described in Srimad Bhagavatam as the first place I read that he's not actually Ugrasena's son. A yaksha came in and is actually the father of Kamsa. What a demon. And yet Padmavati still feels, it's described in Srimad Bhagavatam very nicely, but she's very close with Krishna. She's very close with all the residents of Dwarka. She's right in there, a very close associate of Krishna. And yet there's always this sort of play, her son was Kamsa, and she's got little envious things she says. It's just really, really amazing, this play, and yeah, you hear a face only a mother could love, a demon child only a mother could love. Rosemary's Baby, Hare Krishna. But yeah, so this sort of idea that a demon could be loved by the mother is quite fantastic, and how it works in with Krishna's drama, that Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu are Jai and Vijay, and yet those experiencing the play firsthand are really living it. For Krishna, it's all this wonder. Actually, sometimes Yogamaya covers Krishna as well, and he gets to live it also. But that's the whole purpose of this pastime, for Krishna's sporting, fighting, and yet Diti has this direct connection, and from it she gets Prahlad. So it's wonderful how it all plays together. It's quite amazing to see, a mother can love a demon. And she also, besides loving the demon, she also was considerate of the trouble he would cause. And she withheld the powerful semen of Kashyapa for 100 years, it's described. She held until it just was too powerful. They had to appear.
Krishna doesn't get covered, he would act like he's covered.
No, he'd directly get covered. Yogamaya covers him over to allow him to experience these different... Otherwise, what would be the point of running away from Mother Yashoda? He feels fear. He's just faking it. Oh, okay, I'll make some tears roll out. No. He's jumping down from the grinding mortar and running away in fear of Mother Yashoda, who catches him from behind. Yogamaya directly covers over so that he's experiencing these leelas. So the same thing is described. You have that picture drawn by His Holiness Satsvarup Maharaj of a Ghasura there. And Krishna's, he's seeing his friends go on the mountain. For a moment, he becomes afraid. If you read that section in Krishna book, Prabhupada writes, in that section he says, Yogamaya covers him over. He feels fear. He actually is afraid. What will I do? My friends are being swallowed by a Ghasura. Powerful.
Thank you. I was just not really just a kind of a meditation or reflection. I was appreciating how you brought out, Prabhupada's point at the end that milk auspicious, blood inauspicious. And I was thinking about this dynamic that when something is offered willingly and naturally on its own time, just like the connection between Kashyapa and Diti had to happen, and it's natural and beautiful if it's coming at its own time. And if it's forced, and if it's demanded, and if it's taken instead of received, then it's inauspicious. So similarly, like the cow is giving all these things, and if it's received, it's auspicious, and if it's taken, it's inauspicious. And just the difference between those two verbs and those two mentalities of I receive what is ripe and in season, and for me and my quota, you know, everyone has their quota, as you should
yeah, don't take someone else's quota.
Don't take whatever is not belonging to you. You should punish it. And otherwise, the taking, the making it yours, which is like the center point of the whole American dream, the material life, the modern kind of paradigm, it is super inauspicious. Because the cow is there, it's like, why do I have to wait for milk? I'll just kill it and eat its corpse. Seems like a good idea. It's actually like the worst idea. So just how that plays out in really everything in life, you know, if you wait and you get what's actually coming, you're a little patient. The waiting, you know, it's not so nice. What a goodness pleasure, it's poison in the beginning. But because you waited, it's actually beautiful. And much better than whatever you could kind of concoct by you know, short-circuiting the waiting process.
That's a really, because when you read, actually how it's described is this Adesha of Kashyapa. He instructs, he tells her. And how she responds is not with words. What's described in Srimad Bhagawatam is she begins grabbing at his clothes. And he understands from this, okay, there's no waiting. And so it's being taken as it's being forced. And that distinction is really nice. You know, that which is given, that which is ripening at its own time. There are certain fruits. Ananda was just telling me, she got these mangoes, and she said, these mangoes are special because they let them ripen on the tree. Normally for shipping purposes, they pick them extra green and they ripen. And when they ripen, when it takes too long to ripen, you don't get the full benefit of the sweetness of these fruit. And so that distinction was made also, you know, picking it too early. But that which is taken and that which is given, really, really nice distinction. Maharaj.
Well, there's also then a range of auspiciousness in the way we obtain milk. There's taking milk and accepting milk. So if we have an industry like the dairy industry where the cows are kept in very nasty pens and force-fed corn to increase the production, which isn't good for them, lots of corn. And then the milk is sucked out of them by machines, really very mechanically. And then when their production dwindles, and they're sold for slaughter, that's different from the devotees taking care of cows. I mean, that's drinking affection. The other, maybe not so much.
Yeah, and now we've come recently in the past, probably less than a decade, it's really become a large topic of conversation, you know. Devotees going vegan, which before was unheard of in Prabhupada's time, you know, it was all about the milk, all about making paneer. Now we have a significant portion of devotees going vegan. When I was on bus tour 2008, we were eating a lot of milk and cereal, and I got a huge boil on my chin. It was such a intense boil that it's become a sore spot on my body, probably for the rest of my life it will be. Anytime there's excess toxins, it goes right to that same spot, and it swells up again. And I couldn't understand why it was happening, because I felt quite healthy. And after bus tour ended, I was living with my father in California, and over the course of a month, I got over 50 boils in 1 month, over 50. Every day, a new one would pop out. Every other day, I'd get 2 on my back. Huge, not like proper India boils, all close to my spine, extremely painful, couldn't lie down. at night I was just in pain for a month. And one of my friends, Madhu Mangal, Markandeya, he came up to me and he was looking bright and shiny. He had always had skin issues, and he was just looking so clear and beautiful. And he said, I commented on it. I just said, wow, your complexion is amazing. And he said, I stopped drinking milk. And it was like Krishna sending a message, you know, because my father and I was eating cereal every morning. I stopped drinking milk in less than a week, like really quickly, 3 days. I didn't get another boil. They disappeared and they went for good. After a whole month of not having a single moment go by where I didn't have at least 2 on my back, they went away instantly from not drinking milk. And I spent time in Gitanagari, I spent time in New Taliban, and I drank insane amounts of milk right from the cows there. Not a problem in the world. No difficulty with digestion, no difficulty with because it's milk lovingly received from the cows, as opposed to milk that's pumped full of God knows what hormone difficulty. These struggling cows, it becomes poison for the body, at least for my body. I couldn't digest it, and it manifested in these toxins. So that is, it's difficult. I know there was recently a push, even in this last month, I think Kusha was posting that there's a move to make all the temples give the deities only ahimsa milk somehow. So that would be nice.
I was just going to say, devotees also do boil milk. You know, we don't really drink cold milk. Cold milk can make people sick. But there's one more thing. In the last 20 years, they started using a lot of really terrible pesticides. I don't think it's the milk, it's the pesticides that the cows are eating. So that's one more
Whatever it is, somehow or other, there's not a loving transaction there. Something's poisoning. Everything in the material world is poisoned. I was just reading last night, little Nimai is there, and he's eating, discarded bits of clay and things from the pile where, you drink once and you throw it. And his mother is saying, what are you doing? Why are you eating that? And he says, oh, well, it's just a transformation of earth. The vegetables we grow is the same thing. It's all the same thing. You can eat clay or you can eat food. And his mother says, no, that's not how it works at all. One of them has purpose, the other doesn't. If you just grab a piece of clay from the ground, it's useless. But if you fashion it into a bowl, then it has function, it can carry water. And little Nimai, his first response is, oh, okay, now let me drink some milk. Thank you, Mother. Why didn't you teach me this philosophy earlier? Now let me drink some milk. But this, what has a use and what doesn't, to understand that distinction. People just blur that line into everything. One is auspicious, the other is inauspicious. The same sort of, and of course this is a more subtle philosophical point, but on a very gross level, same thing Shami Prashpur was saying, you take the meat from the cows. No. Take the milk lovingly. Let your mother live.
Well, I was also thinking, I guess, on the line of the cows, that it's so inappropriate to behave like Krishna at all. And yet, if we're taking care of cows like how Krishna did, that's the only time when we can actually talk to Krishna.
Krishna says he's setting the example in a lot of ways. So it's not just tending cows. But definitely, tending cows and worshipping the brahmanas are the 2 highlighted points. Namo Brahmanya Devaya, Go Brahmana Hitaya. Krishna said, for Hita, for the welfare of Go and Brahmana, cows and brahmanas. So those are definitely the 2 highlighted ways in which we should emulate Krishna. But there's other. Did you have your hand? Oh, I thought I saw something from my periphery. All right, let us all go honor wonderful prasadam. Srimad Bhagawatam ki jai.